kind of feel bad for these people, but at the same time I don't because they're stupid.
See a circle around yourself, just start pissing everywhere.
Oh, I hate the Dutch.
Welcome to our country, and so
she doesn't really look Canadian. She looks almost American. Just insulted all of Canada.
Oh, every time I say something up, then you gotta. If I'd known that before, I would have just interspaced every other sentence with something horrible.
Well, I haven't felt my feet since I sat down in a chair.
Can you see your feet, though?
No. I'd rather do anything else on the planet than go tip a cow over.
How about Canada? Is there any stream access issues up in Canada?
nobody cares.
Not very much.
Kids, if you don't understand that joke, ask your parents.
Evan, Derek?
Yeah.
Oh, crap, here it comes.
Your flies are open.
Thanks.
Grab hold of your flies. This is a podcast for nymphers, strippers, swingers, and dry fly guys. It's the show that brings you stories, instruction, and conservation from three guys who live it every day. This is The Open Fly.
All right, 3 weeks off. Was it 3?
3 weeks off.
That's longer than I ever want to do again. I missed you guys.
I need my podcast legs back. I've lost it.
All 28 inches of them?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
A little bit shaky.
Yeah. Well, constant travel schedules pretty much doomed the last month of podcasting. I was in Utah for a while, then Derek went to Montana for the Orvis Rendezvous, and then came back, and then decided Hawaii was a good idea. And he came back, and now we're podcasting.
Yeah.
For the record, I didn't even leave Duval during that 3 weeks.
You went to Canada.
I did. Oh, I did.
I was getting to that.
Sorry.
So we were all out doing other things.
Yeah.
It's like a spring fling, like a new birth of an awakening or something like that.
That's deep. All right, we have in the studio with us Becky Selengut. Did I say that right?
You sure did.
Sweet.
Sweet.
Yeah. Becky is an expert podcaster, way more so than we are. She is the author of the Good Fish book, Sustainable Seafood Recipes from the Pacific Coast. Hi, Becky.
How's it going?
Hi, Becky.
Hello.
We're grand.
Hi, Becky.
It's nice to be here
It's
Yeah.
nice to have you here.
with my super loaded coffee.
Yeah, I feel like we're already at the after party. We've been hanging out, chatting for a while now and having a great time and enjoying whiskey and all that fun stuff. So I guess we can go ahead and get into Becky's segment unless we wanted to banter about anything else before we get going. How's everybody doing?
Fine. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'd like to say welcome back to the listeners. It's been a while for you too. So
Yeah, thanks
hopefully
for-
you're doing fine as well.
Hope they're still there.
Yeah, we might have lost them at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Becky, tell us a little bit about you.
Ooh.
You.
General-
I'm just leaving that open.
Elevator speech, just 30 seconds.
30 seconds. All right. I'm a chef, cooking teacher, podcaster. I'm getting into stand-up, which is really fun.
Say something funny.
Up what?
Say something funny.
Stand up and say something funny right now.
Sausage. That's all I got.
Festival.
Yes. Which is what I heard the show was until I got here today.
Yeah, we're spicing things up a bit.
So I write cookbooks, I teach cooking classes, and I do private chef events. I love food. I love this, focusing on kind of wild food, sustainability, foraging. I love being in the woods.
You like hunt for mushrooms?
I hunt for mushrooms.
She just wrote a book on that, too.
I'd like to buy that book
coming out.
because I need some help in that area.
It's called Shroom. You won't forget it.
That's a book for you, Derek.
Yeah.
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 Cool.
So anyway, I'm kind of always up for an adventure.
So are we.
And as long as there's a frying pan and a good dinner at the end of it.
Sweet. So where do you tend to kind of focus your teaching? Like what area? You mostly Seattle area? Do you travel?
I do travel, but
So our listeners on the East Coast can hire you to go out there?
Shit, if you have the money, please call me. If you want to fly me out there to teach you a cooking class, I am all there.
We could fly her in the corporate open fly jet.
Yeah, we have
I
that.
don't think I want to be in an open fly jet. I don't know what that really
It's an
means.
open cockpit.
Yeah, there's just a lot of words in there that are dubious.
The open fly cockpit.
Yeah, there's just too many. There's going to be a lot of duck.
It's almost redundant.
Duck quacking in that.
See what time off does.
Yeah.
Sausage fest.
I'm getting hungry looking at this book, even though I've already had breakfast.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. I've made a lot of things out of there for the wife, and I recommend that anybody out there make stuff out of there for their wives.
Where can they find this book?
Dead rainbow trout.
Oh, no.
They can find it everywhere books are sold.
All right.
Amazon.com.
Yes, but please look at your local independent bookstore.
Yes,
right there.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm talking about.
Go to Elliott Bay. Go to any of those great little.
I wonder if
bookstores.
our Duval bookstore has. That's mostly used books, though. I think, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I've heard that they sell some new titles there, but I've never.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we're coming full circle. Look at the publisher. What's the website that says right there?
Sasquatch Books.
Oh,
.com.
And you don't.
Are you a believer? Are you a believer in Sasquatch?
I take the fifth.
You can drink the fifth, but that's not what I asked you.
I'm agnostic about Sasquatch.
Oh, that's a fair answer.
Yeah.
It's a fair answer.
She's left herself an out.
You're militantly unattached to a yes or a no?
Pretty much.
Really?
Yeah. I think most things have proven to me that people, when they die, they just stay dead and that there's not Sasquatch roaming the woods. But I don't know all the answers.
Well, but Sasquatches aren't ghosts, nor
No,
are
I
they
know.
spirits.
No,
They're
I
like
know.
I think that was two
they're
separate.
sentient beings.
Are we getting into a whole other topic
Well,
here?
I think
Yeah.
they're actually a reincarnation of human beings after they pass away.
And that's impossible.
Have you seen one?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you started it by printing that on your
Well,
book.
I want to
so.
hear the story because I'm open.
Well, I saw the first time I've seen a Sasquatch was on Dead Man Pass down in northeast Oregon. Jumped over a freeway concrete barrier at about 1 o'clock in the morning.
You did?
No, it did. I was driving at the time. It took just one step over the barrier like it was nothing and then ran across the freeway, 2 lanes in front of me, about
Then
60
picked up a
yards.
car and
6
chucked
yards in
it.
front of me and took 2 steps to get across 2 lanes of the freeway.
Wow.
That's an inseam.
That's crazy. See, I hear stuff like that, and I'm just like, if I saw that, I would probably have a whole different viewpoint. But until I see that, I think I'll be a little bit
It's like going to
skeptical.
church sometimes.
Is
Yeah,
it?
I don't do that.
I don't either.
Me either.
But it can be similar to that.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah, there's some crazy shit, though, that
Yeah.
I'm open.
It's the same argument as church, though, because just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean that you can't believe it.
right. So that's probably not the aspect of your book that you thought you were going to come to talk about today. Was being with Sasquatch Books.
Well, but Sasquatch like to eat fish, too, so this is a good segue.
It is. So this book, Good Fish, I bought it a couple years ago when it came out, and think it's really an outstanding piece of literature, and have used it myself quite a bit, and bought it because of the kind of shout out she did for Steelhead and Steelhead on the Marketplace. So give us a little bit of some history. What led you to write this book?
Honestly, the true story is that Sasquatch, not Sasquatch, but Sasquatch Books, approached me and asked me if I wanted to write a book on sustainable seafood. And the truth is that many people would jump at the chance, and I actually said no on the phone because sustainable seafood issues are, as you guys know, extremely complicated.
Extremely political.
Extremely political. They're changing all the time. And the experts are on their toes constantly because things change so quickly. And as a chef, and a writer, it just seemed like I was getting into a hornet's nest, and I didn't really want to be a part of that. So I told them honestly that it would take me years to research it, and by the time I was done researching it, it would take me more years to research the new stuff. And I was afraid that by the time the book came out, all the species would be on the list to not buy.
Right.
So I didn't want to do a species-specific book for that reason, but there's no way to write a cookbook without saying what fish you're using. And so it was a conundrum, and I didn't really know how to get out of it. I kept talking to people and finally decided that it was kind of a cop-out to run away from the challenge, and decided to woman up.
There you go.
And
Plus, they probably dangled that golden carrot in front of you.
there was no actual golden carrot. It seems very glamorous, I'm sure, to write a cookbook. It is really not.
Kirk probably knows that all too well.
It's a lot of work for very little money. So it's you don't get rich off writing cookbooks unless you're like some huge name.
You have to
But-
die, and then you'll become a famous author.
Which is why I've chosen this moment to
Yeah.
commit Harry Carey.
Now, this is kind of like social suicide. So.
Yeah. No, I mean,
This won't help. Unless you're Hank Patterson, this really won't help.
yeah. I think that
I've already committed it on my own podcast.
But yeah, I think that this topic in general is something that should be important to fly fishermen and other conservation-minded anglers of all types. Because many of us do, not everyone, but many of us do eat seafood. And even me kind of trying to stay up to it, like stay up to date on that kind of stuff. When I'm at a restaurant or in the marketplace, I'm not always entirely sure which one of those things is okay to buy. Most of the times I catch my own, but if I am in a marketplace and I see something, I don't really know. So it's good to have some resources like that has some recipes kind of based around those fish. So
The thing is like not only, I mean, whether you catch the fish on your own or you buy it doesn't really matter. The truth is, if you don't know how to cook the fish properly, it's a wasted fish. So people don't know how to cook fish, and the truth is that 70% of Americans buy their fish in restaurants.
Right.
So that's a lot of people who aren't choosing to make fish at home. You know?
Right.
And so teaching people how to cook it correctly, pick it correctly, and not waste the fish was my goal.
And the thing I hear a lot from people who don't eat fish is, I don't like that fishy flavor.
Right. And then I ask them, are you from the Midwest? And 9 out of 10 times they are.
Yeah, because they get that after, well, a lot of times those commercial fishing boats, they have a under the deck or whatever, where they keep the fish. They don't freeze them, but they keep them like at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Not technically frozen, so they still call it fresh, but they'll sit down there for a week or 2-3 weeks. And then go into port and then to market, and that fish was never frozen, and it's 2-3 plus weeks old at that point.
Because there's no definition, there's no legal definition for fresh. And, and so I do a lot of consumer education. You know, why is flash frozen sometimes superior to fresh? And why can you not say that, you know, frozen is always worse than fresh? Why is that?
That's totally false.
You know, and there's a lot of myths out there about cooking fish, and I try to attack those myths and also just simplify a really complicated topic on sustainability. You know, it really comes down to a lot of times just knowing the people you're buying from. And,
for sure.
And calling them out on the bullshit factor. And you can pretty much figure it out pretty quickly. Yeah,
because we talked before, the bullshit factor is very prevalent in the steelhead market. And you mentioned in your book, you know quite a bit about the steelhead in the market. And kind of tell them a little bit what's going on there with the chefs and the local restaurants kind of seem to pick that up.
I think most chefs don't have the time, honestly, and I'm not going to slam chefs because I've been there and know it, don't have time to really dig deep and research stuff. And when their distributor is telling them this is a sustainable catch, they've heard the words they need to hear. Right. And they don't have time to dig deep on that.
And anybody that's listened to the show knows that steelhead are not a sustainable catch.
Yeah. And so, you know, you hear what you want to hear, and you go forward.
Yeah. And where did you get your info on steelhead? Because they don't even show up on Monterey Bay Aquarium stuff, the Monterey Food Watch list. Where did you kind of get educated on that?
Talking to fishermen friends, reading everything I could get my hands on, doing a lot of research. I spent a year just studying all of the issues around sustainability and our local fish in the Pacific Coast.
And steelhead probably comes up a lot.
It does. And, you know, you read enough, and you read other books, and you talk to a lot of people, and you realize that, you know, just because they're on the, you know, being sold and local chefs are using them does not necessarily mean it's a good thing. I mean, you know, like there's lots of fish that are caught by bottom trawlers, and, you know, oh yeah, it's a local snapper, it's wonderful. It's like, well, you know, no, it's a rockfish, and how did they get that?
Yeah, they
you know,
sometimes it matters not just that fish, but the other fish that were a bycatch.
Yeah, and what they're calling it. I mean, the names are all cattywampus.
Like Chilean sea bass.
Exactly.
That can be how many different things.
Right, because Patagonian toothfish didn't sell well.
Yeah. Were you going to say something there, Derek?
I was going to just make a comment on the book. So the first 20 or so pages are quite instructional. What tools to use, what these definitions of things mean. So people typically pick up a cookbook, they flip right to a page that looks good, and they go from there. But you start at the beginning telling people what it is, why it is, how to use it, and so forth. And you use the acronym in here of FISH. So explain that to us, what a good fish rule is.
Oh, man, I haven't looked at my book in so long.
Sure, here, I'll give it to you.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
This is an awkward moment in broadcast.
What did I write in my book?
So second, third paragraph.
You didn't memorize it word for word?
You said
I did.
Good fish rules.
FISH as an acronym. Can
we
play with that?
Yeah. I just finished a book on mushrooms, so I'm on to the shroom rules
wait,
now.
You were on mushrooms, or the book is about mushrooms?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Good answer.
So the first bunch of pages, I kind of wanted this to be like a sustainable seafood 101 for people, so they could just, if they read nothing else, they could just read this front matter and feel like they had some tools to go forth. So the good fish rules were for the people who really are ADHD and couldn't read the whole front matter.
Squirrel.
I'm going to say that again. For the people who are ADHD. So good fish rules, FISH. F, farmed can be okay. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't ever eat farmed food, or farmed fish. And I'm like, how were the mussels you had last night? And they're like, I love mussels. I'm like, farmed, so.
Yeah, shellfish, for sure,
so
that's kind of the way to go.
Giving them some education about all farming is not bad, all wild is not good. I stands for investigate your sources. Ask good questions. The more questions you ask people, the more you can realize that they're bullshitting you. You can tell when they start going like, this, you just know that they don't know what they're talking about. And I would go into fish stores a lot and start asking questions and just to see what kind of bullshit they'd give me. And it's just a lot. It's a lot of bullshit. So investigate your sources. Know where you buy your fish. I mean, PCC is a great one. I do work for them.
If you're in Seattle.
If you're in Seattle, sorry. Yeah, because they do source very well.
Yeah, and a lot of different areas have similar type markets, the local sustainable type grocery store market, whatever. Yeah. Essentially.
Yep.
Carry on.
Farmers markets are great if you have people who are selling fish and your friends who fish, who know a lot about fishing. They're always a good resource as well. S stands for smaller is better. A lot of people just aren't as into the small fish as they used to be, and it's actually a much more sustainable way to go, to eat down the food chain a little bit and go for the feeder fish. I'm a big fan of sardines for that reason. H stands for home. So if you live in the United States, stick with domestic. Because even though it's a simplistic way of defining it, pretty much the biggest problems right now are from imported fish.
So the S
Canada,
including Canada. Yeah.
Actually, some of the biggest problems in farm fishing.
Canada. The Atlantic. BC. Yeah. I mean, you're probably very familiar.
Stick with U.S. Yeah. I can honestly say this is the. I mean, I love being an American. This is the one place where I'm actually completely patriotic. I think on the fish thing, we do pretty damn well compared to the
rest of the world.
Compared to the rest of the world,
we're still not as good as we should be.
Absolutely not. So. Yeah. I'm not that patriotic.
No.
I'll criticize us, but we're still doing better than a lot of other places.
So with the S and the H part of that, so S being the smaller fish, right? I get that, but if you're putting a focus on the forage fish that the larger fish feed off of, how do you measure that sustainability? Because if you start eliminating more of the smaller fish out of the food chain,
like what you see with the herring,
how do you
the herring up in Alaska?
Well, the thing that we're not looking at when we break it down like that is that most of the forage fish is not being taken by human consumption. It's for pigs and chickens and turning into
farm fish food,
and for cosmetics and for feeding our farm animals.
Or for out on the East Coast,
dog food, cat food, like a whole bunch of other stuff like this.
They're the fish oil pills, or what they call it, menhaden, something like that they farm out, or they net out on the East Coast that the stripers eat. That's a big one.
So a lot of it is being pulled for inefficient uses. I mean, we can get forage fish out of cosmetics and out of factory farmed
I didn't
feed,
know that.
And then we'd have a lot more fish for the fish and a more efficient way. You know, a human being eating a forage fish is much more efficient than feeding it to a chicken that the human eats. So it's cutting out the middlemen.
Colognes and perfumes that have a fish scent actually popular?
Seriously, dude, are you wearing cologne that smells like fish?
That's my excuse.
How do you think I marketed the book?
Lack of hygiene may be another issue, but
some people just come by it naturally.
Little cod behind.
Is that a little mahi you're wearing? That's nice. So then the H part of it is home. So eat food that's close to where you are. So is that in conflict with people in the Midwest who ship in food? I mean, the cost of shipping in fresh fish from other places. I mean, should you eat where you are? And in that case, do people in the Midwest really have a case for eating fish?
So they can eat their walleye and just be happy with it.
So
good fish.
Yeah, that's why I said it's a pretty simplistic kind of thing, and it's so complicated. But by home, I really meant domestic U.S. Gotcha. So I wasn't thinking local. Right. I was thinking more domestic. So
should Canadians buy USA fish too?
Certainly, if it's better quality than the farm crap. Sorry.
No, don't be.
We don't have any farmed fish sponsors on the show, so don't worry about this.
Yeah, they hate me. I get some hate mail from Alaska people who want farms in Alaska.
Oh, that we're starting to get them here too. You've been paying attention to that. They're talking about putting them in the Puget Sound.
There's a few already up around the Anacortes area.
Yeah, and they're talking about doing more.
Yeah. Worst idea ever.
They're disgusting to the average person who sees them for the first time. My wife was out on a boat with her company a couple of years ago. She'd never seen a salmon farm, and there was a floating pen out there, and they pulled up alongside it, and she looked in, and she doesn't have strong feelings about these issues one way or another, but when she looked in and saw these fish stacked up shoulder to shoulder she was fairly grossed out. And I think if the average consumer could see the conditions that these things are raised in.
And when they're shoulder to shoulder, you think like they're just crapping on each other and like that. And they're just like, there's so much like crap and waste and everything in a very concentrated area. Yeah. And that's part of the big thing for like the disease and stuff too, and the sea lice and everything else.
It's called farmed bouillon.
Well, you can just give them antibiotics.
Yeah.
They'll be okay.
Yeah, then they dump in all the antibiotics like he's talking about, and they're trying to deregulate that.
But they keep them in with those nets. The antibiotics can't go through the open net.
Oh, right.
That's how that works.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's all right then.
That's
okay then.
Yes. Yeah. So those wild salmon swimming around the pens they're fine.
Yeah, and they never get out, and they never.
No, for sure.
No.
So where most of us interact with fish, then, like you said, at the grocery store, or at the restaurant. I've been talking about this issue with my family for a long time, and every time we go out to eat and there's fish on the menu, my wife always asks, "Where does this fish come from?" Mm-hmm. So that for most people is the point of where this issue really comes to a head: is how do I know where that fish is coming from? So what questions should people ask about where their fish is coming from?
They definitely should ask where it's coming from. And it's a frustrating question to ask because a lot of times people are going to give you, like I said, they're going to make something up, or they're going to, I don't know, like sometimes they'll say, like I actually had someone say to me, from the distributor. Mm-hmm. And that was their answer. Mm-hmm. And they kind of looked at me like challenging, like, you going to keep asking me questions and slow down service?
And a lot of times you'll see things that are
like, that's not acceptable.
We were talking about like the
it's funny, but not acceptable. I need more information.
Yeah, the kind of mislabeling, because there's regulations for salmon. You can't mislabel salmon. A king salmon, a Chinook salmon is a Chinook salmon. You label anything else, that's regulated. With things like steelhead and trout and stuff like that, that's not the case. And there's farmed rainbow trout in the Upper Columbia River that they market as steelhead. Are you familiar with that? Mm-hmm. And that'll show up on menus as Columbia River steelhead when it's actually a farmed rainbow trout.
Right.
So. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's okay when it's that, but then again, you're in the salmon farm issue. Those fish get out all the time up there and are actually starting to. In my favorite steelhead river in the Upper Columbia, there every trip just about now I'm catching one of those fish. They get out of the Columbia River or in the Columbia River, and they go up the tributaries where the steelhead are spawning, and are up there out competing the steelhead smolts that are these a lot of ESA listed fish populations, and they're competing for them. And for the same food. So I've been out fishing for steelhead, and here I am catching one of these farmed fish that's made its way through the Columbia and up that tributary.
Are they triploids?
Yeah. And they're very, very obvious when you catch them. I mean, they're.
So are you talking about Rufus Woods?
Yeah. Well, they actually go, they come out of Rufus Woods, go over through Chief Joseph Dam down into Lake Pateros and go up, the Okanagan, the Methow, even some down to the Wenatchee, the Eniat, and all those tributaries. So, that's that quote unquote Columbia River steelhead farm situation, and kind of a little bit more about what's going on there. So there's always a lot more to it than it seems like.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. So outside of fish too, you got shellfish, crab, anything like that? Is that kind of the same? What are the kind of the rules with that? Are you looking for farmed versus wild? Fill us in a little bit about what to look for there.
I mean, I like to harvest wild shellfish myself, but I recognize that most consumers are buying farmed. Mm-hmm. So there are issues with farming shellfish for sure. There's issues with everything,
right?
But in general, again, simplifying it a little bit, way less issues with farmed shellfish than there are with open net farmed salmon.
Like with the oysters and all that.
Yeah,
because
so
oysters actually do quite a bit.
Yeah, so I have gooey duck in here. I have.
You mean geoduck?
Yeah, geoduck. That's right. Gooey duck and clams and mussels and oysters, and I talk about them. I talk about what issues that still come up sustainability-wise, but in general, with the book, I tried really hard not to be negative Nelly. Mm-hmm. People hear a lot of negative stuff, and a lot of consumers are thinking, I shouldn't eat fish anymore, I should just eat beef because it's easier. And that's actually not the direction that
No.
I think most environmentalists would like us to go. So,
cow farts are bad.
Yeah, so it's like I want people to eat more fish, not less fish, but make better choices with the fish, So
it's pretty in line with kind of, with this show, we always try to highlight conservation and how we can improve river habitat, how we can do things to improve our fisheries and things like that. And I think this here, I mean, commercial fishing, fish for food and all that impacts our fisheries on quite a larger scale than a lot of these other issues we've talked about. But since it's not angling specific. It's not something that a lot of anglers are thinking about, on a day-to-day basis. But I really think that it should be something that people get a little more educated about.
The other thing I talk a lot about is waste and not being so greedy with fish. I mean, I recognize that a big guy is going to have a bigger appetite than your average person, but in general, I advocate a 4-ounce portion per person.
Sounds about right.
We need to be eating more vegetables and fruits anyway, and this stuff
cut.
Look, Mom, I'm going to eat more than I have.
Well, you can get your calories with whiskey.
What's your position
Some of
on
that
farmed versus wild vegetables?
I don't ever eat a farmed vegetable. Only wild herbs. That's how I keep my figure.
There you go.
Yeah, so you forage. And,
That's right.
And dig up roots.
In fact, I have to cut this short because it's been at least 10 minutes since my last meal. I'm like a cow. I have to constantly be grazing.
Ew. Yeah. So, I was going to go somewhere with that. Somebody else say something while I think about what I just forgot.
You're wearing no shoes today.
It's true. I'm not usually wearing shoes during the show.
It's because he's got that fish cologne on and it's
Evening with codfish.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
It's a brand.
Is it?
Yeah.
Do I get an open fly T-shirt as part of this?
Since you're going to put us on the spot.
Glad you brought it up.
I just see 100 of them.
Did you notice that I'm wearing mine today?
I did.
Yeah, I think our listeners have probably picked up on that by now, too.
Yeah. It's quite nice.
Chest bump the mic there, Kirk.
That was my...
So I get this question a lot about smoking fish, and how do you keep yours lit?
Wow.
Is this a doobie question?
No, on page 131 it says how to smoke fish at home. So I'm just asking,
well,
how do you prefer to smoke your fish?
I do ghetto style smoking because I don't have a smoker.
So you go on a blunt?
You hollow out a loaf of garlic bread and you stuff it in there and you quack.
Absolutely. What's the problem? No, I smoke fish in like a wok setup on my stovetop. So I take some applewood or alder chips, light them with a plumber's torch, burn them, with a fan on for about 30 seconds to a minute. Put a oiled grate over them. Put the fish on it. Put the wok lid on it, and put a towel over to cover any. And then turn the heat off. And 10 minutes, fully smoked fish.
Really?
And I have a video online.
Is this inside the house?
Inside the house. You can take it if you're worried about the smell and all that. You can actually once you can. I keep the heat on my gas flame, okay, on my the one that has the biggest BTUs, the most BTUs, and then as soon as the smoke is built up in the chamber, I turn it off. You can take it then at that point, run it out to your front porch, and just leave it there.
Oh.
Okay, and if for some reason it's not fully cooked, all you do is just throw it in the oven to finish it. But I have a video online for listeners. It's goodfishbook.com, and it says how to smoke a fish with a wok. And it's obviously if you have a smoker, bypass all of this instruction and use your smoker. But if you don't have a smoker,
that was a gratuitous F-bomb.
I said my stretch goal was to get quacked on this podcast.
All right, well, we'll give you that one.
You can bogart somebody else's smoker to do your fish, right?
You looking at me?
Yeah.
Did you see my smoker out there?
I did not.
I'll show it to you after here.
Yeah.
So you, considering the lowest common denominator in our listening audience, don't use a Teflon coated wok.
Definitely not
For lit wood.
No,
Okay.
definitely not. And if you care to preserve the wok, put some foil down. I use a wok solely for smoking, so it's.
Is there a Teflon coated wok?
I don't know.
I imagine. Don't they Teflon coat just about everything?
I don't know.
Teflon coated wok, by the way, as a chef, is the dumbest thing I've ever
I'm
heard.
sure.
In my
Teflon
entire life,
coated
because
most
the whole
things.
idea is to get a wok screaming hot.
Yeah.
So
Right.
That would be like killing parrots left and right.
Well, we just had to.
You know
get
that thing, right? The parrots die when you heat. Have you heard this?
Nope. Inform us.
It sounds stranger than fiction, but if you overheat Teflon, it creates toxic fumes that can kill parrots. Like if you have a pet parrot.
Oh.
I figured that's the reason why most people should know that.
Yeah, Teflon's not.
It sounds crazy, but it's
Yeah,
actually
Teflon's
true.
bad.
Teflon's pretty bad stuff.
Yeah, I stick to cast iron and all clad myself.
Me too. I'm all cast iron
must have been
and all clad.
I have all clad, but I don't think I've used it in the last year or two because cast iron is awesome.
I'm mostly carbon steel and cast iron.
That was one of those great moments of cooking where someone actually had a Teflon wok and a parrot, and
It sounds like a skit, doesn't it?
they're like, "Holy shit, that's my parrot!"
It sounds like a Monty Python thing, actually.
We're going to replace the
It's
term
dead.
canary in a coal mine with parrot in a Teflon pan.
Right. I mean, seriously, that is kind of funny. Like, who was that first person to just be like,
Right.
"Oh my god, the parrot's dead"?
It's a parrot, and how'd they make that connection?
Someone else with a parrot was like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was they went all sciencey and tried to repeat the experiment.
It's like the butterfly theory, Butterfly flaps its wings someplace and then
A parrot dies?
Parrot dies.
Oh.
Maybe.
On that note,
On
this
that
is
note.
where on my podcast we go. On that note, to a break.
Yeah, well, we're getting there. We're
We don't
hitting
do
our
breaks. We just
You just go through.
Yeah.
push through.
No, I think that about covers. Is there anything else about your book or anything else that this is your chance to make somebody want to buy your book or hire you?
The recipes work.
It's true.
So I tested them. Like most cookbooks celebrity chefs, they don't test their recipes very well, and they don't really work in a home kitchen. I worked in restaurants for many years, and my goal is to take restaurant-worthy dishes and make them really easy.
Right.
And I set up the book for beginners to experts, so each chapter is a different fish, and it starts at the most easy recipe for someone who does never work with that fish. So you go to the first recipe in each chapter. If you've never worked with that fish before, if you're from the Midwest and you think all fish is nasty, you go to that first recipe, and then as you get your skills, you go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you're a
I didn't know
pro,
that.
if you're a pro and you're like a weekend warrior, you can go right to 4 and 5.
Yeah, because the last one I made out there was your black cod recipe.
With soy caramel?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, that's about a 3.
Yeah, was it? I remember I made like a reduction or something, like poured it over it, and everything was like sizzling and everything. I felt like a badass.
Yeah, you are a badass.
Yeah.
Because you went right to 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the best ingredient to put on a fish to make it taste really good, and what's the worst?
How do you seal in the juices?
You don't seal in the juice.
How do you get rid of the fishy flavor?
You pick better. Wait, so many questions coming at once. You pick better, ketchup. And what was your question?
Oh, I was just making a joke because I know that's a pet peeve of yours.
Which
The seal in the juices.
Oh, yeah, that's a myth.
How do you feel about sea mammals?
Pinnipeds.
Is there a section in here? Or
I think
fish?
seal is the worst thing to put on a fish.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, remember you were telling a story not long ago. I think it was on Facebook or something about just being in like a sushi bar and just like overhearing another conversation
God.
about seafood.
Oh my God! Oh,
That's
yeah.
got to be. I do that with like beer a lot because I fancy myself kind of a beer nerd, and
Yeah.
overhearing other people talk about beer, I just cringe and have to like walk away.
Yeah, this guy was saying that he was telling his date. Clearly, they were on a new date because there was all sorts of nervous energy that I was picking up sitting next to them. And he's like, "You got to try geoduck. It's the best thing. Geoduck. It's this really big thing. It's really phallic, but it's geoduck. It's so good." I was just like, "Wow, all
Yeah.
right."
And then wasn't he telling her about? So you got to like turn up the heat and seal in the
Yeah,
juices.
you got to use a special pan, and you got to get the heat really smoking hot because that's the only way you seal in juices. And I just want to turn around. You're such a poser. While you're talking, leave him now.
You should have interceded.
I totally wanted to.
Yeah.
But then when I decided not to, when I saw her taking her shrimp tempura roll and knocking out the tempura bits with her chopstick because she was like gluten-free, but she was like not left a pile of tempura bits. The best part of a tempura roll. And I was like, why did you order that? And I'm like, you deserve each other.
Yeah, perfect.
If you're listening, I'm sorry, guys. I hope the date went well.
Hopefully they won't breed.
Yeah. we can only hope.
Do you have any other awkward moments or cringe-worthy stories about being a chef? And
Oh, God, so many. God.
just pick one.
Jeez, put me on the spot.
We can edit out a pause.
It must be hard for you to eat out at restaurants because aren't you always judging, comparing, being harshly critical?
I'm more judging like right now, like that question, than I am
all right.
actually going out.
Hot
No,
seat.
Just kidding.
Hot seat.
Just kidding.
The high chair hot seat.
Honestly, so few people ever want to cook for me that going out is a true pleasure, and very rarely. I mean, I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. I really don't. I'm not that critical because I'm just so happy to be get, not having to work, that I actually enjoy it. I am much more critical with fancy restaurants than I am with like a taco truck or down
I ate at a
home
taco truck
or
yesterday.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like I have low expectations when the food is like soul food, real food, inexpensive food. When I go to a really fine dining restaurant and I know I could make the food at home and they're charging me so much money and it's just the taco truck would have been a much more satisfying meal, then I get a little judgmental. But in general, the places I can afford to eat, I'm just happy.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's a good attitude.
I want to give a shout out to Mashiko restaurant in West Seattle for sustainable sushi because that's a big issue.
I still haven't been there yet.
It's big issue people don't realize is not only there's a lot of like mislabeling of fish in sushi bars. They did a lot of studies that most of the fish in sushi bars is not what they're saying it is. But not only that, most sushi bars are serving
Bluefin
really
tuna.
bad, unsustainable species. And so
You mean that bluefin tuna maguro is
not
bad?
quite right. Yeah, and I'm going to say hi to Henry right here because we have an issue. He always likes bluefin, and I'm just like, Jesus, going to hell. Anyway, so Mashiko's great. They do.
I've been thinking about. I've been wanting to get over there for a while, so it's worth the visit.
Yeah, it's great chef, great food, and guilt-free dinner.
Awesome.
Dining.
I won't feel guilty.
Where are some of the best restaurants for people to go to eat that have sustainable seafood in the Seattle area?
There's a ton of them.
Just shout out a few here.
Poppy on Capitol Hill. Honestly, Anthony's does good sourcing.
And they're pretty
and
big
they're big.
player here.
Anthony's and Ray's and for your average folk.
Ray's was one of those that picked up steelhead, and when contacted, they immediately dropped it.
They dropped it, so they have an awareness.
And we were sure to thank them and praise them for that. So.
Also, I would give a shout out to Blue Acre.
Steelhead Diner, same. Yeah.
Bad name. Right fish.
Right.
So the people that come up to Seattle, like on a cruise in the summertime, and they stop by the big market.
I would
Steelhead Diner.
I send them to Tom Douglas restaurants. I would send them to Steelhead. I would send them to Ray's, to Anthony's. Those are the big places that tourists are more likely to go to. And if you have more time and off the beaten track, Poppy, Mashiko, those smaller places.
What about the place that throws fish at you from behind
They
the
just
counter?
went sustainable this year.
Did they?
They did.
Okay.
And it's really cool because the other ones in the market aren't yet.
No.
And so they're going to set a nice precedent for the rest of the market.
See, there was a fight a couple years ago, and I was kind of involved in getting them to stop doing seafood or steelhead.
I was trying to get them to stop fucking throwing the fish. It's a terrible thing to do to a fish. But no, they're great. They just came out with a cookbook. And they've cut a lot of their species that were dubious, so they're great.
So no more monkfish to greet you when you walk in?
That one was fun. Is that the one that kind of stood out?
Yeah, that was fun. I don't know. I would assume not.
Yeah, because that's kind of seen as a no fish to buy.
Although it's starting to come back.
Is it?
Honestly,
it's all right?
yeah.
I had monkfish pate not long ago and found out afterwards that was bad.
I think actually Monterey Bay has put monkfish back on their list.
Cool.
So,
then I don't feel as bad about eating that monkfish liver pate.
Do you,
All they want
do
is
you fish
peace.
yourself? Do you recreational fish?
I do, a little bit, but very beginner. I like to fish for trout, and I do a lot of forage fishing, like mussels, clams, that kind of stuff. And
You know how to catch herring out on the piers out here?
I don't. I do squid jigging,
There you go.
which I love.
Herring are
I love
really easy to
squid
catch out off the piers.
I'm good. I like easy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I'll show you how to do it sometime.
Yeah. No, on my bucket list is salmon fishing and halibut fishing.
Well, I'm
Never done
going
it.
to take Becky salmon fishing this year. You can mark my words.
My goal.
Yeah.
Get her on a halibut with a dry fly. That's some
They're
good
trying to make you
stuff.
center pins.
No, then I'll be the bait, right? Because it'll just take me, right?
No, I'll take her out into the salt water and get that experience, and then on the river. Two very, very different experiences for salmon, and both equally awesome.
And I will cook you whatever we catch.
Sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think the timing of this show is really good. I hope we can launch the podcast before tomorrow because if I'm not mistaken, tomorrow is Good Friday, which if you're Catholic, I'm not, but I live with Catholics. It's a big day where a lot of people actually eat fish.
There we go.
So eat sustainable wild fish.
See, I don't even know what Good Friday is, so
It's a good day to go fishing. Which
I timed
am.
this very, very well.
Today is Monday, Thursday.
Monday, Thursday?
Yeah.
That just because you got back from Hawaii, it feels like the start of the week for you?
I live with Episcopalians.
Oh.
That's Catholic without the guilt.
No, it's Lutherans that drink.
Oh my God!
Well,
Look
see?
at all these names.
Win-win.
I like Lutherans that drink. It's Mormons who fill in the blank.
No.
Come on.
No, we won't touch that.
Oh, I see. I found the edge, did I?
We've offended every group on this show, but I think even we were going to find a line somewhere.
Those are powerful people. We don't want to mess with them.
Hey, let's get back to Becky's book. On the back cover, I think it has one headline that should be enough to convince people to pick it up. Discover the good fish of the Pacific Coast. The fish that are good for you and good for the environment. Oh. Pick it up based on that.
Yes.
Did you write that, or did you have?
No, that's a marketing team.
Well, nice.
I would buy it because it's snarky. You could probably sense my personality on here, and I put a lot of humor into the book, and hopefully made it fun for people.
I've enjoyed my experience with it so far.
Sweet.
Because, reading through the recipe and then be like, she said that.
I'm looking forward to a follow-up title, Bad Fish.
That's a Sublime song.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's either a band or a song.
Actually, people have been teasing me and saying, when's Better Fish coming out?
There we go.
Why didn't you use a Bad Jew Fish for the name of or Bad Jew?
Well, a Jewfish is actually a name of a grouper.
It is.
I've caught one.
Yeah.
I think Bad Jew.
We have plants. We have Wandering Jew and Jewfish. So
Yeah.
I feel like my people are well represented
Yes.
in nature.
It's okay, we
You're
can
Catholic?
say that.
I'm Jewish.
See, Jerry's black cod with shisho cucumber salad and carrot vinaigrette. Is that a Grateful Dead recipe? Or
No, that's Jerry Tronfeld. He was my mentor. He's my mentor. I worked for him at the herb farm for many years, and he's now the owner of Poppy. And he's a brilliant chef, and so that's one of the recipes. I got contributions from 5 chefs I really respect. So there's 5 recipes in there from
Is that the herb
5
farm
chefs.
in Fall City?
Woodinville.
Oh.
Is there a white cod?
Is there a white cod?
Yeah,
Equal
I think just
opportunity cod.
Just cod.
just cod.
Aryan cod.
Oh, God.
Now you're offending the Germans.
I'm German.
The Dutch. We don't care about the Dutch.
Black cod, Aryan cod. What else? There's a lot of cods.
Yeah.
Good.
That seems like a good place to just go
Let's
ahead.
end this on Aryan.
Yeah.
Very much. It's been a pleasure being with you guys.
Well, Becky, thanks a bunch for coming out and humoring us hill folk with a visit.
You're welcome.
that's
Is there more
awesome.
whiskey?
There is, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
And yeah, we very much enjoyed it, and hope to get you out on the water soon to actually catch your first
Right
salmon.
on. Right on. I love it.
Yay! I'd be honored to help.
Hold on.
Yay, whiskey!
Wow.
No, thanks.
All right. Well, with
Yeah,
that,
brush my teeth.
we are going to get to break here, so we will be back in just a moment.
Now back to the open fly.
Welcome back. We are back with our guide stories segment, which is Derek's segment, so I don't know why I'm doing this, but today we have Camille Egdorf. Camille has grown up between Montana and Alaska, and I'll let Derek kind of take it from here. Derek, did you do your homework, or when you in Hawaii, did you just kind of ignore everything we're doing here?
I was on vacation.
All right, so do you want me to bring back your segment here?
No, that's all right. I can kind of muddle through it.
All right.
Well, I have a quick
always
question.
be prepared is the answer.
Yeah.
Quick question. You said that she grew up between Alaska and Montana. That's a vast area. Where precisely did she grow up?
About halfway between there.
Halfway between.
Canada?
You're not Canadian, are you, Camille?
Yep, definitely Canadian.
Oh, there we go.
See?
All right.
Yeah.
No, I actually grew up in Hardin, Montana.
There you go.
Hardin, Montana. Where's that?
That is southeastern Montana, out there by the Bighorn River.
So how did you make your way up to Alaska? Tell us that story.
Well, it dates way back to kind of the 70s. My parents both went up to Alaska when they were fairly young, and
You're awfully young for being there in the 70s.
Well, I'm leading up to that. So.
Oh, sorry.
But my parents started in the business in 1982, and I was born in 1989. And I spent my first summer up there when I was 6 months old. And so from there, I spent every single summer of my childhood there, and then migrated back to Montana for the winter and spent my winter there, and then just kept doing the north and south migration throughout my childhood.
So you've never really spent a summer down in the lower 48?
No, I mean, there was a period of time where I did spend a couple summers in Montana, and that's when my parents stepped away from the business for a couple years because they sold. And so that's when I spent a couple years in Montana, and then we ended up getting the business back, and then that's when I started going back up again.
Cool.
I was
So-
about 13 or 14 when I started doing it again.
So what is the business that your parents are running up there where you're spending your summers?
Where is it?
No, just tell us what the business is. What's it called? What's kind of your thing there? What are you guys doing? What do people go there for?
Fishing?
Well, it's called Western Alaska Sport Fishing, and it's a fly fishing lodge that's basically based on rainbow trout. And we operate from early June into late September. And, clients come from around the country, around the globe, a lot of times too, to come up there and spend a week fly fishing for rainbow trout, Arctic char, and Arctic grayling.
What's been the biggest difference that you've recognized between fishing in Montana and fishing in Alaska?
Well, the biggest difference is the amount of people. In Montana, you can go fishing, you can see 5, 6 other people in one fishing access, or you can see 10 to 15 other boats floating up the same river that you are. Whereas in Alaska, you go out fishing somewhere and you're the only one there. I mean, the only other competition you have while fishing is probably the grizzly bear that's 150 yards downriver from you.
Do you have any fun grizzly bear stories?
I've definitely had a couple of pretty good close encounters with some grizzly bears while out on the river. I think the scariest one of them all was just fishing along this gravel bar, and then all of a sudden just kind of the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I looked around, and there was this grizzly bear standing there maybe 30 yards away, just kind of looking at me, sniffing around. And so I started waving my arms, and he just turned around and went off into the bushes. But nothing too scary. I didn't have to start blazing guns or anything like that.
I was going to ask, shotgun, revolver,
paralyzer to the chode.
Yeah. What's your sidearm when you're fishing in bear country?
Well, I have a .454 Casull lever action rifle.
Is the front sight ground off?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Some people will understand that.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
The ground off sight on the front?
Yeah.
You can't really aim. You just have to point and shoot it where you want it to go.
Well, that's a polite interpretation. No, most people ask ignorantly. They say, well, I'm going into bear country. What kind of a handgun should I carry? And people say, well, it really doesn't matter as long as you file off the front sight so it doesn't hurt so bad when the bear takes the gun away and shoves it up your ass.
Yeah. I've heard that before as well. Yep.
Take the scope off at least. So what's the when it comes to having clients with or on a guided day, what do you think is the biggest difference between an Alaska experience for the client's perspective and a Montana day?
I think the biggest difference is, Montana is an awesome place to go fishing. It's one of the main reasons, excuse me, why I moved to Bozeman was just the fishing that there is here. But going up to Alaska, just the sheer impact of the wilderness up there is so impacting that a lot of people, they come up there just for the sights of it. But the actual fishing aspect of things is the rainbows up there are so perfect. You'll catch a fish that has absolutely no hook scars. It's probably never been caught ever before in its life. And you can also catch fish up there on mouse patterns. And that to me is probably one of the biggest highlights for a client is being able to catch that first rainbow trout on a mouse, and just it's just an incredible experience. And I think that is a big difference for a lot of people when they come up to Alaska.
What kind of let's talk a little bit about technique and gear, the differences between Alaska and Montana and even the lower 48. I think a lot of times, when you guide someplace and you travel someplace else, you use the same techniques there. What has been probably a couple of the biggest techniques you've seen make the shift from Alaska down to Montana? Have you seen that have a positive impact or a negative impact?
In Montana, a lot of people use nymphing rigs, which usually is 2 flies. A nymph of like a worm or like a nymph like a midge or something like that. And up in Alaska, there is some of that goes on, but most of the time we're using streamers. We're throwing big flies. And that includes throwing mouse patterns, that includes throwing Dalai Lamas, big woolly buggers, streamers, all sorts of big flies. And I think that's a big difference between Montana and Alaska as far as fishing technique goes, is you're casting the bank, you're working the bank hard, working cover, casting underneath logs, and really trying to dig for those big fish to come out of that. And there's some of that in Montana as well, but I think Alaska is more of that. And we definitely get some of the dry fly opportunities as well. Most of the time, it depends on where you fish in Alaska. Every river is different. But on the Nushagak where we're at, we don't really do any kind of dry fly fishing other than throwing mice, mainly because the rainbow trout do not eat dries. They do not eat little caddis or mayflies or anything like that. That's more the grayling. But the rainbows, they want those big flies. And I think that's pretty much the big difference between the two places as far as
because they're
goes.
More keyed in on bait fish and things like that than they are smaller meals.
Right, yeah,
sense.
Exactly. And then once the salmon, go ahead.
When the salmon are in the system and those big rainbows are moving in behind them to eat the eggs, do you do any bead fishing?
You know what? There is, we do some bead fishing. A lot of people are kind of looked down upon that, but in reality, it's really not that bad of a technique. We use little clown eggs and stuff, glow bugs and things like that, but you're pretty much matching the hatch. Fish are going to be eating those eggs just like they would be eating like a dry fly of some sort. So you're just matching the hatch. And so whether a bead or a glow bug yarn, egg, or whatever works, that's pretty much what we'll do. And we don't do beads too often. I don't really know why. I think we just like to use clown eggs. It's always been a very effective fly for us. But there is definitely some bead fishing that goes on, especially like on the Kenai and other rivers out there by Anchorage.
So tell us a little bit about your movie that you made from your adventures up there. You just released, I think you've done 2 now or just 1. I know the one this year is the one that's getting a lot of attention in the film tours, but tell us a little bit about your films.
Yeah, well, I have 2 films out. The first one I did that in 2012, summer 2012, which was not last summer, but the summer before. And basically what I did was I just went into Best Buy and bought myself a GoPro and took that up to Alaska and just decided that I was going to film my experiences in my life there. And I didn't expect to do as much filming as I did. And when I got home, I was pretty overwhelmed with the amount of footage that I had. And so I just decided that I was going to put a little video together, and that turned into being Forget Me Not, which has opened doors for me that I'd never thought would ever be open for me. It made a huge splash in the industry, and as a result, I was asked to compile another film for the International Fly Fishing Film Festival. And I got some great sponsors, Snake River Prototyping and Allen Fly Fishing, to help me with that. And yeah, yay! And
I know those guys.
Started film. They're pretty freaking awesome. And they helped me along the way, and I did a bunch of filming this summer, and now I have a piece that is filtering through, it's going all over the world with the tour, and it's called Unbroken. And it'll be available online here in not too long. Once the tour gets finished, I'll have it up online, and so the public can see it. But it's been a very, very interesting and fun past year and a half. I've gone down roads I never thought I'd go down.
Awesome. Were you going to say something there, Derek?
Yeah, my next question was just about your role in fly fishing. And do you think did people view you first as a woman in fly fishing or as a fly angler in specific? I would like to say that people see me as just a fly angler in specific, but, women have the tendency to get a little bit more attention in a male-dominated sport. April Vokey, she's been an absolute tyrant in the women's world of fly fishing. She's been a big inspiration for me, and, I do believe that women tend to get a little bit more attention just because we are women. But as people get to know us and as we get our names out there and start doing more, people realize that, we're just not
a woman, we're not a pretty face. We actually know what we're talking about, and we're very informative on what we do.
Yeah, I can be the first to advocate for Camille being the real deal. I mean, she can outfish, outcast, basically anything having to do with fishing. She's most likely, or for sure, better than I am. That's for sure.
Well, I've seen you fish. I haven't seen Camille fish.
Carry on, Camille. I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was just trying to go to bat for you.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I was just saying that, I mean, the more people get to know us and know that we are actually the real deal and that we know what we're talking about, the more people will probably see us as fly anglers rather than just a woman in the fly fishing industry.
So what do you think about the sexualization of women in fly fishing? Is that offensive to you? Or do you just kind of, do you include it in the things that have to happen in order to establish your place in industry? Or, I mean, do you think it's something that should be taken out of the equation?
I don't have a problem with it.
I know you don't.
I want to be sexualized in fly fishing.
You're too short.
Too old.
Well, to answer that question, there's definitely ways to go about presenting yourself. And I'm definitely a firm believer in staying classy and keeping your clothes on and just being real about who you are rather than, I see photos filtering around the internet sometimes that really just kind of irk me the wrong way. Women in a very skimpy bathing suit holding up this big fish and flaunting things. And I mean, I see that as kind of putting a little bit of a bad name for women in fly fishing, but, I mean, you're always going to have that. I mean, that's just the way it is.
It's like that in pretty much any market for any sport or any other thing on the planet.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate to say that sex does sell.
Well, it's because the audience being mostly men and men being mostly scumbags,
Exactly.
they embrace that and they want to see that stuff.
But
yeah, I don't.
No, I think that's one of the things I find refreshing about Camille and others like her is there's not even a hint of that going on, and I think that's so refreshing to see that they're not even, girls like Camille are not even coming close to that path and really selling herself on her skills and her experience. I mean, growing up in Alaska, she's probably 10 times tougher, seen 10 times more in the outdoors than pretty much most of the guys listening to this or anybody in this room. I mean, she could out woodsman me any day.
So given that,
thank you for the kind words. I definitely, I think it's very important to just stay classy with things.
I fully agree, and that's why, over the years have always kind of gone to you and stuff like that for, other business outside of this podcast, with Alan and things like that, because that's kind of the way you present yourself and the way you do things. It's just the fishing and nothing else really gets in the way of that.
Yeah.
And it's appreciated and it gets noticed.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's great to hear that because, like I said, I just think it's a very important thing.
It is. Derek?
What advice do you have for the male guides that are out there that are trying to increase their clientele base with women anglers? Every time that I've had female guests on my boat, if they're by themselves, each one of them is packing a handgun. I don't know if that's me or if that's just the way that it's been. But what advice do you have for the male-dominated industry about attracting female customers?
The big thing is for guys or fly shops or whatever that are trying to target the female industry more is, women are intimidated. I mean, it's a male-dominated sport, so naturally they're going to be a little bit hesitant to jump into something that, they know that guys like to do, and it's kind of a guy's thing to do, but they have a huge interest in. And I guess my biggest advice is just be patient with them and encourage them. And if you see a lady walk into a fly shop, she kind of looks a little lost. Go over there and just be like, "What can I do for you?" And just give her a hand. And it's funny because I've run into a few friends of mine that are dating these girls, or I talk to their girlfriends and stuff, and they're like, "I'm never going to go fishing with my boyfriend or my husband again."
My wife said that 4 years ago, and it was true.
Well, and I asked them, I'm like, well, why do you say that? And they're just like, it was the most miserable experience trying to learn from him. He got so frustrated with me that I got frustrated, and so I just quit, and I'm never doing it again. And I honestly think that is like the worst possible thing a guy can do is get frustrated with their girlfriend. they're out there because they want to be a part of what you love. And I mean, I don't really have that problem myself. I mean, I could someday, but just be patient with them. I mean, if you want your girlfriend, wife, whatever, to go out fishing with you, just be patient, let her do her own thing. And
well, it's hard when they don't do it right. God.
We can shift gears a little bit here. So, in addition to your Alaskan adventures and Montana, all that, you've recently started doing hosted trips pretty much around the world. Some really cool ones recently. Let us know a little bit about where you've been and some of the trips you put together, and maybe some of the ones you're putting together. You can do a little plug if you're trying to fill up any trips right now.
Sure. Well, this last October, I hosted my first group of anglers to Christmas Island, and I hosted them through a travel agent called Fishing with Larry based out of Columbus, Montana. And I hosted 2 couples down there for a full week of fishing, and it was pretty freaking awesome. It was definitely a huge learning curve as far as hosted travel goes. And then I also went down to Agua Boa Amazon Lodge, which is in Brazil, and we targeted peacock bass. And I had 10 anglers on that trip.
Holy crap.
Wow.
Holy cow, it was an experience unlike anything I'd ever thought I'd experience. The jungle, the culture, the fishing was unbelievable.
The bugs.
The bugs were crazy.
Probably made Alaska look tame. I kind of had to be careful. I mean, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd lift up my sheets in my bed and I'd have like ants crawling around and there'd be spiders on the wall. And that's pleasant.
It was pretty wild. It was very wild. But so I've been getting into that, and I'm actually hosting another trip down to Brazil in December 2014. And then also I have
you still have spots available for that?
I do.
Awesome.
I have plenty of spots. Yeah.
Hear that, everybody? Should get in on that. Carry on.
It's pretty awesome. It's definitely something that should be on everybody's bucket list.
Yeah. Well, we sold some trips for Rick Matney when he was on a couple weeks ago, so maybe we'll do the same for you.
Awesome. Well,
how would they get a hold of her?
Be ready for a trip of a lifetime, that's for sure.
We'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
So, awesome. What are some of the other species you caught when you were down there in the Amazon? I saw some other crazy pictures of some things I didn't even know what, even remotely close to what they were.
There was a Joanna fish. Well, actually, no. I call it a Joanna fish because I couldn't pronounce the actual name, but I think it's called a jacunda, and it's like this part eel-looking thing, and they have 3 different species, and they all have like a little color patch on their cheek. One's red, one's yellow, and one's blue, and those are your 3 different species, I believe. And then also I caught another weird-looking thing. It's called an arowana.
Is that kind of like an arapaima?
What's that?
Arapina.
Because I saw that picture, though. Actually, we used it for one of our promo pictures. The one that must have been the same, because like there's something called an arapaima that lives down there, and the one you're holding up looked kind of like that. So the arowana or whatever must be something similar. Yeah,
the arowana it's kind of like an arapaima because they have that eel-looking tail, but they're 2 different species, and the arapaima weren't really in the area that we were at, but they are in that tributary to the Amazon. But the arowana, I'm getting my arowana and arapaima mixed up. The arowana it reminded me kind of like a tarpon. Tarpon with an eel tail, had huge scales on it, and just the weirdest, flimsiest jaw. It was the creepiest looking thing. And then also we did some hand lining one day for lunch. And
blasphemy! Carry on.
Any noodling?
I know. But you're in the Amazon. You have to take advantage of what's there. And,
I take advantage of what's here. I'm always a big advocate for using any available technique to have fun.
Right. Well, they have so many crazy-looking catfish down there that, I see Jeremy Wade on River Monsters catching all the time, and I kind of wanted to join in on a little bit of that fun. So we caught some awesome piranha. And talk about teeth. I didn't have any idea they were that bad. I mean, I knew they were bad, but those things have some chompers.
Did you catch any of those vampire fish? What do they call those? The pariah? Some pariah.
Oh, the pyara?
That's the one.
No, we didn't. I didn't personally catch any of those. But
those are the weirdest looking thing I've ever seen.
They are very bizarre. They are very bizarre.
You ever seen one of those, Becky? Payara?
No.
I'm going to pull up a picture for you while Camille continues telling us about that. Derek had a question for you.
Yeah, Camille, I've got another question for you. So for any of our female listeners out there that are thinking about becoming a guide, what's your best advice for them? Do you advocate learning as you go, working for an outfitter or a lodge, or do you advocate going to a guide school? Or what's your best advice?
For me, I learned a lot as I went. And, I mean, a lot of that has to do with the fact that I was born into a fly fishing lodge. But, my biggest advice for any woman out there that's looking into guiding, don't be intimidated. That's the first big thing. Just get out there, get with the guys, and learn from them. And if you have a fly shop nearby that's looking for guides, just go to them, ask them, I'm looking into getting into guiding. Can you help me? And just work your way up from there. And then once you get a little experience under your belt doing that, look into a lodge. Alaska is an amazing place to get experience for guiding. And there's so many lodges up there that are looking for people that you're bound to find something up there. And so that's my biggest advice is just build some experience, start learning and getting out with, your friends and family and learning a river, and then go to a fly shop and, work your way in with that, and then start looking into other places like lodges and guide operations and so forth.
Cool.
Nice. So you've got all these Tosa trips you've done, the ones you're got planned. Are there any bucket list places that are not quite in the books yet that you want to do someday?
Oh, yeah. I would love to go over to Africa and do the tiger fish. That is a place that Fishing with Larry has trips to, and so that's definitely on my bucket list of places to go visit. And then also, my idol fish is the permit, and I would love to get down to Belize or
permit or assholes.
Mexico.
That's
I
harsh.
know. I've heard so many people say
I'm
that.
I'm never going after them again after just being snubbed that many times.
They are a pretty pesky fish, I have to admit. I haven't had any chances to go fish for them yet, but I'm fine with a fish doing that to me.
Yeah, just don't do it in Florida. Go somewhere like Belize where they actually have a chance of eating.
Yeah. I've heard that Florida is like the worst.
Yeah, unless you're throwing bait at them in Florida, it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
So, I also want to catch a permit, but at this point, I just go to Mexico and catch easy fish. The ones that swim right up to the boat and will eat anything you throw at them.
So it sounds like a permit is just as tough to get as a building permit.
That's what I've been told.
That's that cutting edge humor that Kirk is known for.
That is.
But,
awkward silence. Carry on, Camille.
Oh, I was just saying that Africa and then permit. Definitely. I wouldn't be surprised if I ever caught my first, or when I catch my first permit, I'll probably just be like almost to tears because I just think they're the coolest.
If you ever look at any pictures of Camille with any fish, being a rainbow trout that she's caught 1,000 of or more, and anything else, she always looks more genuinely excited about catching it than anybody I've ever seen. So catching something like a permit, I think you'd just be glowing.
Yeah, I would be on cloud nine, that's for sure.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to fill us in on before we go? Because we're going to close this up soon, but let us know where we can get a hold of you and where we can book trips with you and anything else.
Absolutely. Well, you can always reach me at my email, which is very, very simple to remember. It's just flyfishchick@gmail.com. And then you can always look up my family's business online at westernalaskasportfishing.com. And then I'm also on Facebook, Camille Egdorf Fly Fish Chick Adventures, and people can reach me through that. And I have my blog, griplips.wordpress.com. And, I definitely going to continue with the host of travel. So if anybody out there is wanting to go fish with me or go see some exotic place, definitely look me up because I'm all game.
Derek, did you have anything else you wanted to close us out with?
No, just thanks for coming on. It's exciting to hear what you're doing up there, and good luck with school, and hope to see you on the water sometime.
Kirk, any more awkward bad jokes?
No, I'm done with those.
You have any decent ones?
No good jokes, no.
Oh, right. Well, Kirk's useless.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show.
Yeah,
this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. We can't wait to watch your video. I've been anxiously awaiting the last couple of months to finally see it. I have had my chances, but since they were after the fly fishing show tour, like pretty much at the end of each of those days, working all day, I wanted to go eat dinner and sit in my room and do nothing.
And,
so I know it's not really an excuse, but it is.
Excuses, my goodness.
Yeah, so it's part my fault. So.
Well, it'll be up online here within the next few weeks, and it'll be open to the public. I just gotta wait for the film tour to finish, and then everybody can see it.
Kudos.
Yeah. Cool. Well,
awesome.
We encourage everybody to check out her stuff. Book a trip with her if you're looking for something to go do this year, because those are some pretty excellent trips she has, and I can tell you that she like I said, she is the real deal. There's not too many people I would recommend going with over her. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. So yeah, go with Camille.
Much.
Yeah. All right. Well, Camille, we'll let you get back to studying or whatever it is you're doing on your Thursday.
Sounds great. Well, thanks again for having me on the show. This was an honor.
This is really going to launch your career.
It is. Her career that was launched years ago. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, like I said, thank you. And, this was great.
Cool. All right. Well, take it easy. We will talk to you later, hopefully.
Sounds great. You guys have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, she's got a cool deal going on there.
Rainbow trout that deny dry flies and only eat mice pattern. That just sounds
Well, the
awesome.
mice are a dry fly.
Well, they're wet, though. They're swimming.
They're swimming, and they're not a fly. They're a mammal.
They float.
They're not an insect. They're a mammal.
Swim.
Spun
Yeah.
deer hair.
I've tied some of those and caught fish on mouse before, but I can't imagine doing it in Alaska. That sounds awesome.
I think
Yeah.
it's not really a dry fly. It's a floating mammal.
It's a topwater streamer.
Yeah, if you've seen some of the pictures of some of the fish she's caught there, they really are some of the most perfect-looking rainbows I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible. And they get into some decent salmon while they're there, too, so it's pretty diverse.
That'd be a fun trip.
Derek's been trying to do it for a while, I think.
Yeah, fire up the jet. Let's go.
Get the open fly up there.
Fire up the jet.
I am trying to. I'm talking with Dave Henry. We might have an open fly retreat with him this summer.
Oh,
if you guys are into that,
yeah, that'd be fun.
Fishing with our guests.
Go up and catch some bull trout.
And some bull troots.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, like we said already, check her out. She's all over the interwebs, the Instagrams, the Facebooks. You just look up her name, Camille Egdorf. It'll show up all over the place. So very highly recommended. Anybody else have anything else before we go on to break here?
Got nothing.
Got nothing. We got to get our podcasting chops back here.
Oh, they're back. They're just
back.
not good.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Something for you to listen to, though, so that's what you've been asking for.
Yeah, they didn't ask for quality.
He just said, give us something.
Give us something, and here it is. All right, well, we're going to go to break here. This is the Open Fly Podcast. We will be right back.
Now back to the Open Fly.
We're back.
Hey, that was my job. I guess we can change it up. Just keeping people on their toes. Yeah. You can keep people on their toes because what is going to be the final segment of this show is usually the first segment on most shows. So
Are we doing it all the way backwards?
All the way backwards. Just something different. You know, we've been gone for a while. We're going to come back with a different show.
Might as well start.
Really shake things up.
Shake things up. Keep it interesting. This is the part of the show that people really want anyway. So we got to keep them.
Make them wait for it.
Make them wait for it.
Yeah.
Make sure they listen to everything else. You know, we don't want to make sure they're not listening to the first 30 minutes and then shutting it off.
Suckers.
There we go.
Yeah.
And randomly, we should just drop this stuff in at strange intervals so they never know when they're going to get it.
Yeah. We'll just keep shuffling the deck.
It's just like fishing.
It is. It's a different river every time you get there. It's a different show.
Keep
every
your
time
flies
you
in the water because the fish aren't going to jump out of the water to catch them.
Right. So yeah, we had Becky and then Camille, and now it's just us. Just us.
Just back to the sausage fest.
Back to, it's business as usual at the Open Fly.
Yeah.
Sausage Fest. So might as well get to the listener feedback. You down with that, Kirk?
I am down with that.
You down, as the kids would say?
Yes.
Is it brought by All of the Woolly Bugger today? Have you decided?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, it can be brought to us by All of the Woolly Bugger.
allofthewoolybugger.com.
Yeah, our guide segment, which we did not point out, is brought to you by Emerging Rivers Guide Service. Isn't that right, Derek?
That is correct.
We were a little off today, being given our vacation, so we missed that. But we would like to thank both Olive and Emerging Rivers for their support of the show.
EmergingRivers.com.
Yeah.
Right on.
Cool. So take it away on the listener feedback.
All right. First up, Shoren writes, Open Fly.
Hi.
I just got a brand new Tenkara rod.
Oh, boy.
It's super duper awesome, and I look great when I use it with my shirt off.
Take your word for it.
I've used it for steelhead, king salmon, and sharks. I always land the big fish on this super stiff rod. Unfortunately, despite spending like 12 hours on it with this weekend, I still just can't figure out how to set it up for left-hand retrieve. Why are you guys laughing? This is... Wow.
It's an honest question.
Yeah. Can you guys help me out? Your biggest fan, Shoren Brown.
Oh, I think Derek here is the only one that actually is in possession of a Tenkara type rod. So, Derek, do you have any experience with going from right-hand retrieve to left-hand retrieve?
I think it's a great question. I think it needed to be asked because I don't think anybody's ever asked that question before.
I did go to the Googler and try to find a YouTube video on a tutorial and was unable to come up with anything.
Maybe we'll get a comment from Tom Sadler or something like that is actually our Tenkara on the fly or Tenkara USA. I mean, how do you go from left hand to right hand retrieve with the Tenkara? I have no idea.
That's beyond my skill level.
Well, maybe they'll call in, or maybe they'll write in, or maybe we can have them on the show sometime. But that's a great question, Shoren.
It is. I mean, that you might be the first one that have actually stumped us legitimately.
Well, I think that if you just will it, it will happen.
Yeah.
Next question.
Yeah, let's move on. The great one to start.
It is.
It got us thinking.
It did.
Thanks,
Deep,
Shoren.
deep. Taylor writes, "Hey guys, another
Is this our groupie, Taylor?
Yes, this is Taylor, and he's a guy. Mm-hmm. Hey guys, another great couple of shows, very entertaining and not at all instructional. Thanks for giving some love to the East Coast fisheries. I'm a huge stripper fisherman, and I was glad to hear you cover some of the issues surrounding the species.
You should try Tenkara with a shirt off.
There we go. Another cool organization that I don't think was mentioned is Strippers Forever. They're working to get strippers acknowledged as a game fish in order to preserve the recreational fishing. So, and then he posted a link, http://www.stripersforever.org.
Oh, that totally changes the email.
I think the great thing about that is that you can give $1 at a time, or you can just roll off like hundreds of dollars
make it
at a
rain.
time. Make it rain with dollars for organizations like that.
Don't throw quarters though. That's
They don't like
usually
change.
frowned upon.
There's no change slot. That's really not a change slot. You can't just put like a credit card in there.
Fish will hit those shiny objects.
Touche.
Keep up the good work and looking forward to more instructionless episodes. Thanks,
Instructionless?
Taylor.
Instructionless.
Yeah,
I don't know. You might have learned a thing or two about cooking a fish today.
that's true.
I'll edit that out.
Okay. Quack. Dean writes, I want to know why the old guy, Kirk, is the only one on the show who gets Twitter and all the other social interweb thingies.
I get the other social interweb things. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't get some of them either, Dean. I don't do the Instagram. It's for the younger people.
Pictures are hard to figure out.
Yeah. We all have day jobs and busy weekends, but you young dudes are supposed to be social savvy. What gives? Let's hear some excuses.
I don't know. I looked at Twitter a few times, and it's just an endless feed of gibberish to me.
I got a call from, well, actually, let me set this up a little bit. So a couple weeks ago, I got a call from somebody that's associated with the Tianwei Land Trust, which is a new thing over on the Yakima River. And he called and asked for a power mapping session, just describing the words that come to mind when you think about that river. And I said, well, there's somebody else that you should talk to because this is a pretty big issue, and it involves landowners and recreational fishermen and commercial fishermen guides. And and I said, here's a person you could call, but let me call them first to make sure that they're open to the conversation. So I called, and he said, and he answered the phone and said, well, how come you're talking to me and you're not on Facebook? So it was striking feedback, and I said, because I'm talking to you on the phone. I can't do both at one time.
So they wanted you to talk to them on Facebook first?
Probably.
Oh.
So I think we get it.
It's a little more impersonal.
Yeah, I think we get it. So that's a bad question. Strike that from the
We just
show.
choose not to do
Strike it from the show. Bad question.
We prefer in-person interaction, which is why we all live up in the hills.
Yeah. Anyway, Dean continues, seriously, I'm truly enjoying the podcast, guests, and topics. Let's hope you get past episode 99. I want to hear from Mr. Bennett, a future guest, referring to Brian Bennett.
Yeah, because he only made it to 99 episodes on his podcast.
Yeah.
But he is going to come in. I've had lunch with him 2 weeks ago, and he does very much want to come in.
Yeah. And why they stopped their great podcast. Well, all good things come to an end.
Yeah, we can inquire when he comes in and talks to us in here.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Your oldest groupie, Dean, at Dean Woe. That's not a speech impediment. That's Dean W.O. on Twitter, and at Gin Clear on Instagram.
Oh, Gin Clear.
Oh, he's showing he's showing how down he is with the social networks.
Yeah.
Way to represent.
+1, Dean. +1.
+1. I like this.
I like that too. I might share it.
Yeah.
Okay, Evan writes, which is awkward because he's sitting right across from me.
Hi.
Hey, Open Flyers. I appreciate a podcast that finally shares my appreciation for the culture that surrounds the fishermen instead of beating to death the technicalities of actual fishing. Respect! Instead of stroking your egos with the specifics of why y'all work, just
I don't understand that word.
Just keep it up. My question is, unfortunately, a local one, but has been heavy on my mind nonetheless. Evan has mentioned...
Evan as in the guy that wrote the email? Or
well,
me?
Evan writing the email is referring to you, Evan, in this case.
Not like Jimmy likes. It's like an Evan. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm following it.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Evan has mentioned in a couple podcasts that steelhead escapement has been better on the Skagit in recent years than on the coast, and lobbies with many of us for a catch and release season into the spring. I don't dispute this claim, but have done some pretty good searches on the internets through the Googler and haven't been able to find a scientifically backed escapement number that would warrant even a catch and release opener. I wonder if you could share more specifically where or who has access to this information. While I'm all for fishing my natal stream, I just haven't been able to produce the evidence to warrant an opener, even if it was just to alleviate pressure on the peninsula. You boys are awesome, and I'm glad I found you. Even you, Kirk.
Hey.
Cheers.
Well, I actually emailed back and forth with them a little bit after this email and actually failed to print out or pull up the reference that I sent to him. But if you use the Googler, as he said, to look up like Occupy Skagit, some threads should come up for like Washington Fly Fishing Forum or anything like that, and they post some of the data, some of the escapement data. Escapement was real low, like in 2009 and the year surrounding that, but has come back better every year since then and is now well over their escapement goals. And many of the rivers that are still open in the state are actually coming in below escapement goals. So that's kind of the argument used for opening it up for a catch and release, very regulated season. So, I totally spaced bringing the actual data to read over the air, but it is pretty easily found if you do some Googling for Occupy Skagit. The data is findable if you get a hold of some of the other conservation groups. I think Wild Steel Coalition, Wild Fish Conservancy, Native Fish Society might have that info if you call them up or talk to them if you're truly interested in it. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to say?
No, it's a good question. Good inquiry.
It is, yeah, because we never really provided the data, and we still haven't, but it is there. You just got to know what to look for.
Right on.
Yeah.
And actually, I should point out that he misspelled peninsula. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but he spelled it Penisula. Peninsula. So that's either cutting edge or really ignorant. I don't know. Or maybe just an honest mistake.
Maybe they have kind of same root words because peninsulas can be pretty phallic.
Yeah. Peninsula.
But that's like an isthmus is different than a peninsula.
It's true.
Yeah. Wow. Next up, Mike writes, great show, guys. When, if ever, are you going to bring April Vokey for an interview? This show has been kind of a sausage fest. Ciao. Wink, smiley.
This episode was totally not a sausage fest.
No, and I don't think that we're not going to bring anything to April Vokey's game that she doesn't already have. So we're kind of small for the likes of her.
And not even, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I mean, we're a pretty big deal here. You know, we gotta not sell ourselves short. But April has been interviewed by every publication, every magazine, every pretty much blog out there. And I just don't know if there's anything that we can extract out of her that hasn't already been said.
We did interview Hank Patterson, though.
We did.
Yeah. Maybe we could get April in studio and she could take live calls.
There we go.
All right.
Nobody's done that yet, maybe.
No.
But otherwise, I mean, I'm a April Vokey supporter. I think, you know, like Camille, she's doing awesome work. She's the real deal. She's an awesome angler. But again, you know, everybody's kind of covered her story, and it would just be more of the same. We'd have the same info everybody else does. So we're seeking out people that have not been given the platform to tell their story.
So maybe follow up with your question by what exactly would you want to hear from April that's what you haven't already heard just yet?
Yeah, maybe that'd be a better way to do it. I mean, I'm pretty confident we could get her on the show, but I would want to do something that hasn't been done yet. And
could we get April and Hank
on the same show?
On the same show, because I think
in
we
studio?
might get some extra downloads if we do that.
That's true. I actually saw Hank a couple weeks ago, talked to him in person, so we know each other on a more personal level now, so I'll see if I can.
Did you see Travis, too, or just...
I did. They were both there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Carry on.
All right. Ooh, that was kind of like a harp.
Like a guitar string.
Dong.
That's his mic stand.
Tenkara. Anyway, next up, Jason writes, and he addresses us as gentlemen.
He's wrong.
Yeah.
Just wanted to drop a line and say I'm enjoying the open nature of the podcast and good message. I've finally caught up on all the episodes this week and have a couple questions. I am absolutely new at fly fishing and have not yet caught a fish on the fly. I'm looking forward to it and would like to hear about everyone's first catch. What was it like when you first got one in and got your hands wet?
Oh, boy.
Still, let's see. Let's address that.
The thing is, I started fly fishing when I was like 6, and I, be perfectly honest, don't really remember the first fish I caught doesn't even stick out in my mind. So
yeah,
no, I mean, not that I'm even too old to remember. It's just like I caught a lot of fish when I was a kid. So the first, at that age, I wasn't really old enough to know that was special, and that's something I should remember, I guess. And I just kind of let it blend in with the rest of my memories. I can remember my first steelhead. That was pretty cool.
There you go.
That was on the Klickitat River here in Washington, and was with my longtime friend and somebody that we're going to get on the show here soon, Joe Willauer. Is a friend I actually grew up with, went to preschool with him even, and we actually got out on the river together, and he floated me down the Klickitat River, and we caught a steelhead, my first steelhead. And the thing I find funny about that first steelhead was we had been pounding the water all day, covered about 10 miles of river, still hadn't caught a fish, and pulled over for lunch, and he was on the side preparing us some lunch, and I'm just sitting in the boat with a beer in my left hand and the fly rod in my right hand with my feet kicked up on the side of the boat, flipping out about 10 feet of line, just kind of killing time. And steelhead took it and threw my beer and set the hook and landed the fish, and that was my first steelhead.
The unintentional angler.
Yeah, so
yeah.
There you go. I mean, I'd done a lot of steelhead fishing before that, and be perfectly honest, I'd even caught steelhead before that, but when I was younger and when I was a kid, I didn't really understand.
Hurry up, Evan. Hurry.
I didn't know what the difference or why it was more special than a rainbow trout. So the rainbow trout and the steelhead I caught when I was a kid kind of blend in together, kind of like my first fish. So that's the first real, honest steelhead experience that I had that I had caught and remembered. So there we go. Derek.
I think for me, I've had a lot of experiences with people that have caught their first fish on a fly rod. So I think those I remember more than the time that I caught my first.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same way. It's a lot more fun for me that way.
Yeah, that's quite a bit more enjoyable for me than anything else. So I mean, I've got all kinds of stories about someone else's first time. So that's I'd reflect on that more than I would my first.
Any in particular stick out?
Yeah, there was a young woman I used to work with. Actually, she used to be an employee of mine, and she booked a trip for her and her father on the river, and we were less than 50 yards from the put-in, and her first cast, she swung a fly right through this little seam, and a 20-inch cutthroat popped up and grabbed it, and I've got a picture of her with a smile as wide as this fish, but it was a honest to goodness 20-inch cutthroat on the Yakima, and that was
nice.
And she stopped fishing after that. She's like, "Well, that was easy."
Yeah, I've got a lot of stories like that because I too. I mean, not even being a guide myself, I for some reason just really enjoy taking friends out that aren't fishermen or just kind of getting going and taking them out, to get their first fish, and have been rather successful with it. And one in particular, I've actually got 3 different stories, but I'm only going to tell one, but where I took friends out that had never really gone for fish like that and literally hooked steelhead on their first cast ever fishing for them 3 different times. And
screw them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And that's happened 3 times now. And the first one was one of my buddies and I went up on the Skycomish, which is right down the road from us here. Or is it up the road?
It's
up. Yeah,
it's uphill.
It's up the road,
but it's downstream.
It is. So downstream up the road for the Skycomish, which is an amazing river to fish. Not so much of an amazing river to catch because it's very, very difficult to catch steelhead in that river. And we walked into a run. It was full of dudes. We walked back out, drove back downstream to a run I'd never been to before. I was like, all right, stand here in the tail out. Here's a woolly bugger, just a black woolly bugger, tied that on. Stand here and just swing and around those rocks right there, and I'm going to go up to the top. And, I was thinking, I'm going to go get the good water, let him figure out how to cast and swing. So I put him there with like a floating line and a heavily weighted woolly bugger and a long leader. And he started casting, and I walked up to the top of the run, turned around, and he was corked deep in something. And I was like, oh, he's snagged. Walked back down there, and he's definitely in a fish. About 20 minutes later, I tailed what was and is still the biggest steel I'd ever seen in my life, over 20 pounds of Skycomish wild
fish.
Steelhead.
That's karma. I'm going to just go up here to the head of the run and take the good water because you don't know what you're doing.
Literally his first time fishing for steelhead, probably on his first or second cast, hooks the fish of a lifetime.
I hope he quit after that, too.
He kind of, yeah. He mostly just goes for bull trout now.
Nice.
So, yeah. And Kirk, I know it was a very, very long time ago, but do you have any memories of yours?
I don't remember my first fish. The first significant memory I have where I guess everything was just coming all together into a perfect situation was I was about 13 or 14, and we were on a Boy Scout canoe trip up into Bowron Lake Provincial Park up in Canada, and we were camped at the mouth of a little stream on one of the lakes one night, and just before dusk, the water at the confluence just started erupting with sipping fish, and they were little kokanee salmon, and went out there and just they were hitting whatever attractor dry fly, probably a Royal Coachman, just caught more fish than you could count, and that sticks in my mind. It wasn't the first fish I caught on a fly, but it was the first fly fishing
one that
memory.
made an impression.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying too. Like my first one obviously made no impression, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had started fly fishing in the last 10 years, I might be able to do it, but it was 25 years ago. So
25 years ago. I got married 25 years ago. That's the year that Camille was born.
It's true.
Yeah.
Graduated high school the year that Camille was born.
I'm obviously substantially younger than my co-host.
Yes.
I just turned 30, so we're all old here. Carry on.
All right. Well, let's see. So anyway, to wrap up Mike or Jason's comment, he said, also, I'd like to know if Evan did the CrossFit Open workouts and how he did.
Why does that matter?
What is a CrossFit Open workout?
I don't even fully understand. And how does CrossFit always come up? Derek brought up a couple of episodes ago, first rule about CrossFit, you don't stop talking about CrossFit. I don't think it's everybody else that's brought it up at this thing.
You're wearing a CrossFit t-shirt.
Yeah, but I didn't say anything about it. You did.
Is it like Tenkara?
Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, I go to CrossFit multiple times a week, and the CrossFit Open is like a it's not fishing, so nobody's interested, but it's like you do a prescribed workout and they score how many reps you did or how well you did or something. And yeah, I did all the workouts, but I specifically did not want to compete or be recorded, so I couldn't tell you how I did.
Yeah,
so,
I don't like to be judged either. Yeah.
No, I'm not into competing in anything I do, whether it be fly fishing or I'm really into brewing, which we mentioned before, and there's competitions for brewing and stuff like that, which I also avoid. And I also avoid competitions, any kind of benchmark or judging in my workouts. So I'm just not the kind of person that seeks that. That's not what I'm not looking to be scored in anything I do.
How about personal competition, just with yourself?
That's personal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jason wraps it up by saying, thanks for the entertainment. It certainly makes my work days smoother. Glad to be bringing the smooth.
Yeah, we're smooth. Is that it, or is that everything?
Let me turn it over and see.
It is.
There's another sheet of paper underneath here. You stupid turd captain.
Oh, hey, there it is. Stupid turd captain writes in.
That's all we got.
Yeah, that's it for feedback, but we definitely have more. We actually have some new sponsors for the show, which we're pretty excited about.
Nice.
So as far as our sponsorships and stuff go for this show, we're not bringing on just anybody that gives us money. We're really only looking to represent and promote and take money from brands and products and stuff that we would use ourselves and do use ourselves and believe in. And I don't believe in promoting a product that I have nothing to do with or don't use myself. So we brought on Streamtech Boats, who Derek is very much involved in. And we had them on, I think it was our last show or 2 shows ago.
A couple shows ago, yeah.
Yeah. Who, even with somebody like me that's, does not use inflatable boats or anything like that, can honestly say if more often than not, this is probably going to be the boat for just about anything you want to do. Literally the best in inflatable boats on the market. And that's not just us tooting Derek's horn or anything like that. I mean, they're really doing the best. So Derek, tell us a little bit more about Streamtech and all that. So we did talk about it a couple shows ago, but just maybe we'll get a little bit more into why you're so much of a believer in Streamtech and how that happened.
Well, my partnership with Link started a few years ago. He asked me to take a closer look at his boats, and I have a history I grew up whitewater rafting, so I know how whitewater boats perform on the water, and that was simply my answer, was that they don't perform like a drift boat does. So I expressed my thoughts about it, and he simply asked if I would row one, and then give him my feedback. And at the time, I owned a hard boat, and I spent literally 5 seconds rowing this Streamtech Green Drake and sold my hard boats. So everybody says, that they have the world's best drift boat, but this is the company that can say that.
Yeah, I rode Derek's a few days ago, and it is that good. I mean, I own a hard boat, and this boat handles every bit as good as that does, and that's saying a lot for an inflatable.
And eventually, we convinced Kirk to buy one. So
I was just going to say I want one, and then I remember that.
So 2/3 of your open fly hosts own a Streamtech boat.
So it's changed. It's a product that is changing the way that people think about what a drift boat is, and I think you owe it to yourself to row one. So
yeah, I want to say too, the thing I really like about them, and not even being owner of them, but riding in Derek's, is just the walkability. And a lot of other rafts, standing up and while you're casting, fishing from the boat can be pretty awkward. And a lot of guys will put different types of mats and everything like that to try and make it a little more easy to stand up. But just the floor in that thing is incredible. That was one thing that really stood out to me in going in that with you.
Yeah, it's really the difference. The difference is in the construction and the materials, and no other inflatable can claim to perform as well as a Streamtech. And if they try, then you can just row one, and then you can tell the difference.
Yeah, so. And you offer some rowing. If anybody wants to come out and row one, you offer that sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, I've got I do demo days, and actually I have a client of mine who booked me next week who bought another product. And he booked me next week to row my boat down the river and let me fish, just so he could see the difference between what he bought and what I have. So my guess is that there's going to be a on the market next week, and you might want to look at it and get it.
Yeah.
So if you want to oar a boat, just give Derek a call.
Yeah, Derek. Obviously, they want to purchase. They're going to contact Streamtech or Link directly. If they want to get out and row one, if they're in the area, how can they get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me on my website, emergingrivers.com, or you can go through streamtechboats.com. Both of us have got Facebook pages. The number that's listed on Link's website is his cell phone, which he will dutifully answer, and my phone number is on there as well. So that's the best way. And there's, if you live in a place where that's outside of Boise or Seattle, we may have an owner that's got a boat in your area, and we can work to arrange a float with them for you. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the reason why you guys are doing that is because once people get on the oars and they get in that rower's seat or they stand in the front of it, they're usually pretty sold on it at that point.
Yeah.
And that's why they offer that.
Yep.
I don't see too many other companies offering that kind of deal, so that's cool. And, when we started this show, I mean, I think we talked about bringing Streamtech on as a supporter of the show. Even before we recorded, I thought it would be a good idea because I know them to be the kind of company that even me personally not using that product, I know it is the best of the best of the best.
Yeah.
So, and that's not just us tooting our own horns or, just because that's what they use or anything. That Derek and Kirk both use it for a reason. And so if you want to find out what that reason is, get a hold of Derek. But you'll be hearing a little bit more about them with that. They're coming on as a long-term sponsor. So we're very, very glad to have them on board.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add into that, Derek, before we go? Because this is your time to kind of introduce the company, which we did for a good half hour a couple weeks ago, but.
No, I mean, just, if you own a boat, I talked to a guy yesterday that I was on the river with, and he's like, God, I need to buy a raft, but I'm going to buy this one because it's cheaper. So just think about anything that you want to use as a tool or that you want to own, and if it's really the best thing to buy something that's cheap and that won't last, or buy something that's worth the investment and you'll always have. So no matter what you do.
Yep. Cool.
And they're not grossly overpriced. You pit them right up against a decked out hard boat, and you're right in the same ballpark.
Yeah, and it's a boat you can use year round.
Yep.
All types of water.
Yeah. So Streamtech, welcome. We're very glad to have you on board and are very proud to be promoting your product because we all believe in it. Whether, I don't use it, but I believe in it. Derek and Kirk believe in it enough to be using them and trying to get others into them. So then going on to those of you that have a hard boat of some sort, we also have a sponsor there. I personally use a hard boat. It's just because it's what I had before even I knew what a Streamtech was. So I was contacted by a company called Wetlander, who's got the newest of the coatings that you put on hard boats, whether you have aluminum, glass, wood, even if it's not, if you have a drift boat or even if you have some other types of boats, they go on GNUs, airboats, other types of riveted boats, basically any type of boat. They're on even trailers. It's a good coating for trailers. So Wetlander is that as like an epoxy type coating, and I personally was talking to them. I told them I wasn't going to promote a product I knew nothing about. So I talked to them about it, looked at the demonstrations, and was like, this looks like it's the real deal, because I was very unhappy with the coating I had on my boat, which is one of the two coatings that everybody out there with a hard boat uses, and was very unhappy with it. So I went ahead and put it on last week. I chiseled off my old coating, and put this stuff on, the Wetlander on the bottom and all the way up to the sides of my boat. And Kirk can attest to it. This stuff is legit. It is
slicker than snot.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to get Scott on the line here, but I think they should start marketing it like to the NHL as an ice replacement, because it is unreal. I actually coated the boat with it and coated my trailer with it. And when I ratcheted the boat up onto the trailer and it got up over the roller and tilted onto the trailer itself and hit the contact points that I coated, it literally just kind of slid or floated to the front of the trailer. And I actually had to let go of the ratchet, the winch, grab the boat and steer it on to the front of the boat, because it was going to hit the back of my truck because it was going so fast.
Yeah,
so.
I'm going to put it on the bottom of my dance shoes.
That seems like a good idea.
Well, that moonwalk has been evading me for 20 some years, I think.
Yeah. So it is slick. It is. I pulled out a couple rocks and tried scratching it off. Didn't happen. And so we're going to get Scott Hogan on the line here, who is the rep who contacted me. He's going to tell us a bit more about it. All right, Scott Hogan from Wetlander. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
Pretty awesome. And I got to say, so far, and I was just telling Derek and Kirk, this stuff is every bit as good or better than you guys are pitching it on the website. So I got to say, you guys are doing a pretty good thing and might need to step up your talking it up.
Well, we'll do the best we can, but I'm glad you use it, and I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, and another thing I was talking about before we brought this on is we're really only bringing on products, and we're not going to – this is Streamtech and you guys and Alan are really the only, paying sponsors that we're going to bring on for a while, and it's because that, we use this stuff, we believe in it, and we think our listeners will have an interest in it. So you're among the ranks of stuff that we think is that good. So welcome aboard.
Great, man.
Yeah. And so I want to tell a little story about me putting this stuff on my boat. I spent last weekend, pretty much the whole weekend, chiseling off the old coating, which is like I was saying, is one of the only two coatings that most guys with drift boats or other boats use. And tried using an angle grinder to get it off. Didn't happen. I got a paint scraper and a hammer and just spent a couple hours just kind of chiseling it off, and then coated the boat, the entire thing, all the way up to the edges with this Wetlander. And this stuff is slick. I mean, have you guys tried marketing it to the NHL as like an ice replacement?
It's funny, the ownership of the company that makes it, of my company, they're actually Canadian, and they're huge hockey fans. They both have coached and played. Mm-hmm. The son almost went into the NHL, and his boys play. So huge hockey fans. And we always talk about, they do dry land training for their hockey players on our product.
Do they really?
On pads. They shoot off pucks off of it, and they do, like slide boards.
Well, I was just making a joke. That's funny that they actually do that.
No, it's dead serious. And we always think about doing it, but the liability for somebody slipping and breaking their head on something slick that you produce is too great. So we put it on the bottoms of things that are supposed to slide, where nobody can crash their head.
Yeah, and I mean, so Kirk had to step out, but he came over to help me flip my boat back over when I was done, and ran his hands up and down it, and I told him that it was slick, and he was pretty flabbergasted. I think it was beyond even. He's him and Derek both are now interested in coating their trailers with it. So that brings us to the next point where, not just for the bottom of drift boats, this thing kind of this product has a pretty wide use for guys with boats or other things. And I put it on my trailer, and when you have a Wetlander to Wetlander contact, my boat came up over the rollers, came down on the contact points on the trailer, and literally went warp speed towards the back of my truck. And I had to let go of the winch on my boat trailer and jump out and grab the boat to keep it from sliding that far. And I'm used to having to just crank it and it just inching towards the front of the trailer. And it's now pretty much sliding on its own to the front. So that kind of gives a little bit of a testimony to the hardness and slickness of this product. It's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, and you have to be careful. We have a lot of customers who have lost their boats in the launch as opposed to on the ramp, because they're so used to, unwinching or rather unlatching their bow strap
and then
driving
backing
over
it
to the ramp.
And they get it on an incline and just slides off.
Boom, it's gone, yeah. And, I actually, one of our drift boat builders who, when he was testing the product, he gave it to a buddy to put on one of their boats. And, you guys out on the Pacific Northwest, when you're launching your drift boats, tend to go on these unimproved launches, which are basically, dirt luge slides.
Throwing it off the side of the highway.
Spare aluminum or something like that, and, you hold onto a line and you let the boat kind of shimmy down. And this guy, he put Wetlander in his boat, and he did that, and the boat took off and slid, and he held onto the line, and he basically went water skiing behind it, and it pulled him forward, and he landed on his stomach, and got dragged. Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I don't know if this is the best selling point.
No, it's not. I'm just saying you have to be careful, and I think it's in a couple places on the website. You have to be careful. It's now really, really, really slick, and people always laugh and say, "Yeah, it's slick now, ha." And then things happen. It's really, really slick. Yeah,
and so a little more testimony from me. Before I discovered this product or just using other people's boats. So I was in I have an aluminum boat, but I was in a friend's aluminum boat on my local river here, and there's a particular boulder garden where you're going to scrape and go over a rock or two, and you have to kind of slide off of them and keep going. And so we were going. I said, okay, we're going to slide over this rock, and I'm going to row it around, and everything's going to be cool. And I was like, is that cool with you? I do that with your boat? And he's like, yeah, totally fine. And I go in, I get on that rock, and it's stuck. It just stayed there and spun the boat around and kind of did a pirouette of sorts that I didn't want to do, and slammed us into another rock, and the boat literally flipped up on its side and dumped out one of my buddies.
Wow. That's dangerous.
And that was with a coating from another company. I was used to one. This was another one, and it was a pretty scary experience. And it kind of showed, like why slickness is important and why durability is important, because part of it had a lot of scratches and bare aluminum that was exposed too, and bare aluminum sticks to rocks real bad.
It's very grippy. Bare aluminum is extremely grippy. And
yeah.
I didn't even know what a drift boat was probably 18 months ago, and the people just kept calling us, because we started this product for airboats and duck hunting boats and other styles of boats that need to go on dry land. I've never fished out of a drift boat before, so I wasn't familiar with it. And then drift boating guys and guides actually out your way and in Colorado and Montana got a hold of us and started calling us, and they put it on. And I discovered that there is, in fact, a huge opportunity within the drift boating market for our product.
No, it's perfect for it.
It's also so easy to apply. Relative.
Yeah, because I just pulled out a paint roller that I already had and rolled it on like I would a latex paint, and that was it.
Yeah.
I coated it a few times, and that was it. And so, I think you guys are onto something really, really awesome there, and it's surprising that you guys didn't, know that to begin with. But
it's all regional. It's all regional. Every boat, down south they use mud boats. I mean, have you ever heard of a mud boat?
Right. Yeah, I lived down in the south for a minute.
Regional. Oh, did you? What, in the dirty south?
Yeah, exactly. The same. Yeah. So and it's not just drift boats. I mean, what are some of the other boats that people are using this on?
Oh man, flat boats, skiffs, sea dories, prams, airboats, duck boats, mud boats.
Sleds probably out here.
Boats, sleds, jet boats, yeah. Anything fiberglass or aluminum that we're trying to get.
How about
water
wood boats probably too, right?
Yeah, as long as there's fiberglass resin around it. I wouldn't put it on bare wood just because, wood just hoovers up water so easily, even if you have a hydrophobic coating.
Gotcha. Because, wood boats are, I don't see too many, but some hobbyists out here still build them, still buy them. So, and they do coat them. So they probably have some kind of resin on the bottom.
Fiberglass resin.
Okay. Yeah. So basically anything but an inflatable boat is going to be something that you would want to consider this on.
An inflatable boat?
No, I said anything but that.
Yeah, well, I'm not. It's worth a test, right?
Sure. I don't know if Derek wants to coat his yet.
If you deflate it, I would worry that weird things would happen, and you reinflate. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, but that brings us to a nice segue. Your coating, unlike some of the other ones, is very flexible.
Yeah.
And isn't gonna flake off, and put under that kind of stress. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, one of the things that has allowed us to excel in the now drift boating market for us is the flexibility. Aluminum boats take a ton of abuse, and one of the failures of some of the other coatings on the market, they make them as hard as they possibly can because, which is, naturally you want it to be as hard as possible. But the problem with that is a hard coating is by nature inflexible. And so anytime you have any kind of flexing, that coating then cracks. Mm-hmm. Once you have a crack on a coating on a boat, it's over. Now water's migrating through, getting to the hull, and now it's going to delaminate and fall off in chunks. So, we kind of straddle the fence between flexibility and durability and keep it right at the point where it can maintain flexibility so it's going to stay on your hull. The only way to get Wetlander off of your hull is to scrape it off through repeated abrasion over hard aggregate or sand or oyster shells or pinnacle rock or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's not going to bend and then crack and then come off your boat in that way. It just doesn't happen. You have to wear it away through constant use.
And it's also an awesome, we talked a little bit earlier, just a good thing to even consider putting on your trailer on the contact points for your boat.
Yes, as long as you're careful.
Yeah.
You wrap everything down real nice and tight.
Yeah, and the reason why I did it on mine is because my trailer is just straight steel, and it was a little bit rusty, and those contact points were just kind of a point of abrasion on my hull. So I coated those and found out real quick that having a Wetlander to Wetlander contact is like it's floating.
Yeah, it's a Wetlander on Wetlander is as close to frictionless surface as you can get without being in a vacuum.
And that's not marketing. That's actually true. I watched it happen. So, tell our listeners where they can find out more, where they can buy it, anything like that you want them to know before we sign off here.
Sure. The best thing to do is to go to our website, which is airboatcoatings.com.
You're going to do a new domain called driftboatcoatings.com? That might be a good idea.
Well, I think we purchased driftboatbottoms.com or something. I just haven't done the work yet.
You should do that work.
There. Yeah, I know. My SEO is failing badly. But so airboatcoatings.com is the best way to do it. You can reach me through that website. If you leave a comment on that site, it goes directly to my email. My phone number is all over that website. My contact info is all over that website. If you want to call, you'll talk directly to me. Anybody who contacts the website, it goes to me. Every order goes directly through me. We don't have PayPal yet. We don't have any of that stuff. We insisted when we started this, I wanted to talk to every single customer as they ordered, so we can make sure they're getting the right amount of product and the proper product for their boat. And at this point, that seems like it's a huge mistake because I'm having trouble keeping up. But, going forward, we'll have PayPal, but still we're at the point where everything goes through me. So you'll definitely get a human, and it'll be me.
I think that's awesome, just to make sure that people are getting the right thing. I think that's admirable for now.
Right. Good customer service.
Cool. Scott, well, thanks so much for being a supporter of the show. I certainly believe in your product and have no problem, and I'm proud to represent it and promote it. So
cool.
Thanks so much for believing in us, and we in turn believe in you. Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, Scott.
Have fun.
Oh, we will. All right. Well, Derek, that's a show.
That was quite a show for a first one back after a couple of weeks of vacation.
It was ambitious.
It was very ambitious.
Yeah, it might be one of our longer ones, but we left out a couple segments, but we'll just save them for the next show. It's all right.
We have stuff to give away and stuff that people have won.
Yeah, we're going to get to that the next show.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'd rather have Kirk here for that.
It's close. I mean, the next show is close.
It is very close. It's a couple days from now. You guys can wait. We have our fly tying contest, and we want a shirt.
Our refractory period is very, very short.
Hey, that was good. That's good. That's a good zinger. So, yeah, refractory period for the next few days. We'll get our next show on in a few days, and we'll do our giveaways. Some of you will win some things. Some of you won't. And all will be well. Kirk had to step out, and I just don't want to do anything like that without him here.
Right.
So
that's only fair.
Mm-hmm. Life gets in the way sometimes.
I think he was going to be set for winning something, and so now he won't. So.
Right. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. This show is brought to you by Emerging Rivers Guide Service, all of the Woolly Bugger, Wetlander Boat Coatings, Streamtech Boats. And today's music was brought to you by musicalley.com. You can find us on theopenflypodcast.com, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, G+, and all those other social networks. You can email us at theopenflypodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.